darkroom, nothing exists until you decide it should. The photograph is already there, latent and visible, sleeping in a paper, waiting for the precise conditions that will allow it to appear. Patience is not optional in this work. It is the work. Inez had been teaching Felix to develop film for 3 Saturdays. He was a slow learner, which she didn't say because what she had noticed was that he wasn't slow. He was careful. He wanted to understand before he acted. He asked questions that surprised her, that showed he'd been thinking about the question long before he asked it. She understood careful people. She was one herself, and she understood, without wanting to examine the understanding too closely, that she had begun to look forward to Saturdays in a way she hadn't looked forward to anything in a long time. The darkroom was small. The red safelight made everything intimate and strange, cast shadows that softened faces, made the whole world feel like it was being seen through amber glass. In this light, she had noticed things about Felix she was not sure she would have noticed in ordinary daylight. The way he concentrated, the slight furrow of his brow above eyes that caught the red light and held it, the gentleness of his hands when he lifted the paper into the developer tray, like someone handling something that mattered. She had started thinking about what the darkroom did to time, how it suspended it, the timer ticking, the chemicals working their slow chemistry, the image arriving at its own pace, regardless of how much you wanted to hurry it. In the darkroom, you could not rush. You could only prepare the conditions and wait. She'd been thinking about this in relation to other things. The way certain feelings could not be rushed either, could only be given the right conditions, the right light, the right patience, the right willingness to wait and see what appeared. He had arrived in her life through a mutual friend at a gallery opening 3 months ago. He had been standing in front of a photograph she had taken, one of her early ones, from a period she didn't usually show, and she had walked over to tell him the print wasn't for sale, and had instead ended up talking to him for an hour pleasantly surprised to find herself doing it. She'd been less surprised when he used it. On this third Saturday, he'd arrived with his own film, 12 frames he had shot during the week with the camera she'd lent him. She had felt the particular warmth of being trusted with something someone was hoping for. Hope is a private thing. When someone shows you their hope, they are showing you something they have not shown everyone. They had loaded the film in darkness, both of them working by touch. She had been aware of him beside her in the dark, in a way that was not strictly professional. His presence specific and warm, the careful deliberateness of his movements, a texture she had come to recognize as particularly his. She had noted this and continued working. Some things he noted and continued. This was also patience. Now the strips were processed and they were making prints, one at a time, with the unhurried care she had taught him. She watched him work with something that felt, when she let herself name it, like pride. Not the pride of a teacher and a student, that was part of it, but something more personal than that. The feeling of watching someone you care about do something well. The warmth of it, specific and entirely her own. She looked at his photograph in the tray. It was genuinely good. The light in it had that quality of having been caught rather than arranged. The specific aliveness of a moment that was actually happening rather than being constructed. He had an eye. She had suspected this from the beginning, from the way he looked at things before he decided to photograph them, with the patience of someone who understood that looking properly was most of the work. She had been right. She felt a warmth in her chest that was about the photograph, and also not about the photograph. The warmth of being right about someone, the warmth of having extended trust and having it confirmed. She had given him her darkroom, her chemistry, her Saturday mornings, the careful knowledge of her craft. She had given it because something in his attention, in the quality of his curiosity, in the patience he brought to everything he tried She'd been right. She'd been aware for several weeks that what she felt toward him had moved outside the category of professional interest. She'd watched this happen with a detached attention she tried to bring to all developments in the darkroom, noting without immediately acting, observing the change, and waiting to understand it before doing anything about it. What she had observed was this, that she thought about him between Saturdays, that she had found herself on a Wednesday evening pulling out a photograph she had taken years ago and thinking about what he would make of it, not because she planned to show him, but because his perspective had become part of the lens through which she saw her own work, that she had started arriving in the darkroom early on Saturday mornings to make sure everything was ready, and that this readiness was not entirely about the chemicals and the paper. She had observed all of this and understood what it meant. She was a person who believed in understanding things correctly before naming them. She had understood this correctly for at least 3 weeks. She had simply been waiting for a moment when saying something about it would be the right thing to do. She thought the darkroom teaches you that the right moment cannot be manufactured. It can only be prepared for. You prepare the conditions, you wait, and then when the image begins to appear, you are there for it. She was there for it. The darkroom timer ticked its patient count. The chemicals worked their quiet transformation in the trays. She stood beside him and understood that everything that happened in this small, red-lit room was governed by the same essential principle. You cannot manufacture the moment of arrival. You can only be ready for it. She was ready. She had been ready for some time. She had simply needed to be in the right conditions. She thought about what she had been waiting for. Not certainty. She had had certainty for weeks. Not permission. She did not require anyone's permission. She had been waiting, she understood now, for the moment to announce itself clearly enough that she could not pretend she'd not was announcing itself very clearly. The photograph in the tray, his exhale, his face in the red light, full of the particular joy of having made something real. Turning toward her was something else, rising in it alongside the joy. The world very quiet around him, the timer ticking its patient count. She had spent 3 months in dark rooms and knew that sometimes the image arrived so clearly, so fully formed, so obviously right, that all you had to do was lift it from the tray and hold it in the light. It was the image that did it in the end. They were standing at the tray together, watching a photograph appear. His photograph, his first successful one. A window and a plant and afternoon light caught in a way that was genuinely beautiful. And she heard him exhale beside her, quietly astonished. And she looked up at him at the same moment. He turned to look at her. In the red light, his face was very close and full of something she recognized as the particular joy of making something real. And then that expression shifted, slowly, still present, but joined by something else, as he looked at her looking at him. The world was very quiet, just the tick of the timer and the small sound of chemicals moving. He raised his hand slowly, carefully, the way he did everything, and touched her face. His fingers were damp from the developer tray and cool against her warm skin, and she felt a coolness like a detail she would always remember. The smell of Fixer and the red light and his cool wet fingertips against her cheek. He moved toward her incrementally, as if giving her every possible moment to step back. And when she didn't, when she leaned almost imperceptibly toward him instead, she felt him breathe out slowly, a long exhale of something that might have been relief. His lips found hers gently, like light finding a surface, like an image appearing in a tray. Gradually, then all at once, his hands cradled her face, both of them now cool and careful, and he kissed her with the same patience he brought to the photographs, just creating the conditions for it to appear. She felt the warmth of him in contrast to his hands, felt his chest when she leaned into it, solid and warm and breathing. She kissed him back, and the timer ticked and the photograph floated in its tray below them, fully arrived, waiting to be lifted into the light. She felt something she'd been holding. For months, she understood now, or perhaps longer. Release into the warmth of him, the way the latent image releases into visibility, already there, only waiting for the right conditions to appear. She was aware of the dark room around them, the red light, the smell of chemistry, the timer still ticking its patient count. She was aware of his hands, still cradling her face. She was aware of the photograph, still in its tray waiting to be lifted. She thought, this is what the darkroom has been teaching me all along. Not about photographs, about waiting without forcing, about trusting that what is latent will become visible when the conditions are right, about the specific discipline of preparing everything carefully and then allowing the moment to arrive in its own time. The moment had arrived. She was in it. She kissed him back with full presence. No portion of herself held in reserve, and felt the completeness of it. The click of rightness that comes when something finally becomes what it was always going to be. Patience, she thought. The image was always